Georgia recruiting in 2024 has kind of gotten quiet in the last few weeks, but it should be expected. The Dogs currently hold 26 commitments in the class as the season is about to kick off. And today, we're going to take a look at Georgia's top 5 most wanted in 2024. Yes, there's still a little bit of room left. Let's bring on Jake Rowe from Dawgs HQ today. Jake, the Dogs, they have the top-ranked class in America, but they're still in the mix for some major recruiting battles. Today, we're going to talk about 5 2024 targets that Georgia is still in pursuit of. Let's start with the 5-star on this list from California, Aiden Breeland at Mater Dei High School. Now, his teammate Nate Frazier already committed to the Dogs. Can UGA double dip at Mater Dei?
It's going to be tough. Right now, if I had to pick, I like Oregon over Georgia. I mean, I wouldn't even be sure that Georgia's number 2 right now, but I will say this. Georgia's definitely in it. And the weekend that Georgia takes on South Carolina, I believe it's the weekend of September the 16th, is a big date here because that's when Nate Frazier is coming on his official visit, because that's the weekend that Mater Dei is off. They have a bye that week. If they can somehow get Aiden Breeland in town on an unofficial visit and maybe kind of have that same time with him that they're going to have with Nate Frazier, I know they're trying. I don't know that I don't know that it's going to happen. I think there's some headway there, but if they can get him there, I think it's kind of all bets are off at that point. But right now, until Georgia gets that visit, or unless Georgia gets that visit, I should say I like Oregon.
Okay. Georgia's been able to get these Mater Dei boys on campus, so I won't count them out. Let's move down to the state of Florida. I want to talk about 4-star defensive lineman LJ McRae, just insane measurables, 6'6", 275, 280 pounds. He can move. He's a run stopper. He can get after the passer. He can do it all. Now, mainly, I thought this was going to be a big 3 battle. Miami, Florida, and Florida State. But then Georgia gets in the mix. Georgia gets him on campus this summer for a visit, and the Dogs are heavily involved in this one. Jake, what's the latest intel on LJ McRae and where the Dogs stand?
They got him on campus for an official visit, and then they got him on campus again right there at the end of that July, quiet period. I think Georgia's definitely in this one, and my gut feeling says Georgia's going to have a great shot here in the end. Florida, listen, if the season goes like a lot of people think it's going to go for Florida, that's going to kind of take a little steam out of it. And then you got Georgia doing what it's doing with defensive linemen. I will say this, though. A lot of folks seem to think Georgia, Florida right now. I think Florida State getting this official visit sometime, I believe, in October, like right before he decides. That's one to watch. Florida State's doing a good job recruiting. I like Georgia right here by a nose right now, but I think Florida State can kind of emerge in this one pretty quickly.
All right, another top priority for the Dogs is 4-star cornerback Cam McKell. He's an in-state target at Statesboro, Georgia. 6 foot, 180. How much are the Dogs in this one, and who's the top competition?
Well, a lot of folks seem to think that Georgia, and I'm not saying a lot of folks in the industry, a lot of people you talk to in and around think Georgia's in good shape. But here's where I'm kind of struggling with this recruitment right now. It seems like this one is trending towards him wanting to play wideout. And if that's the case, I know Georgia's not necessarily recruiting him at wideout right now, or it hasn't in the past. Maybe they're willing to switch gears and kind of, give him a shot. I don't know. But I think that is something you got to keep an eye on. Again, I like Georgia. I think Georgia's in a pretty good spot. But when it comes to, all right, if he's just absolutely dead set on playing wideout, is that going to be a hang-up? Because I think it's a possibility that it could be a hang-up for Georgia.
All right, moving to the state of Virginia, where 4-star linebacker Chris Cole is set to make a September decision. Now, this felt like a slam dunk for Georgia in June, heading into July. But then, he sets a couple official visits, sets a commitment date for mid-September. What's your read on where things stand right now with Chris Cole in Georgia?
Well, if he committed today, it would be Georgia. I really believe that. Georgia's been a leader here for a while. The issue that Georgia's going to run into here is he's going to see USC, he's going to see Tennessee right before he makes a decision. Now, the good news for Georgia is Tennessee's kind of getting a Hail Mary type of an official visit, and phenomenal job of them by recruiting him and getting a couple late visits here. but it's not going to be a true official visit because he's got a game on Friday night and he's making a decision on Sunday. It'll be like more of a 24-hour deal, more 36-hour deal as opposed to a full-scale official visit. You can never count out USC with all the opportunities and everything out west. You get kids going out there. Listen, I love LA. I know a lot of other people who do too. So I could never blame the kid for that. But I do like Georgia going into those visits with both of those teams having a chance to kind of turn the worm there.
Yeah, I think it's hard to shoot, Georgia down right now, but I kind of look at that a little bit differently than you do. I look at how can Chris Cole go and visit Tennessee on the same weekend that he's committing and not commit to the Volunteers? It kind of seems like it might line up that way. But what you're saying is that, hey, Josh, it looks like it's going to be an abbreviated visit to Tennessee.
And that might be a little bit of an advantage. It might not. Who knows? I mean, he did visit Tennessee. Georgia was leading going into the unofficial visit to Tennessee there at the end of July whenever Tennessee got him on campus. They impressed him. I heard a lot of good things about the way they felt about that Tennessee visit, okay? Then things kind of died down a little bit, and the Georgia noise started to pick right back up. And I think Tennessee's going to have an excellent shot. Don't get me wrong. But, going into it, I think they've got a lot to overcome there because, you look at what Georgia's done at inside linebacker, what Glenn Schumann's done at inside linebacker. They've accomplished a lot at that position. And, Tennessee's got a lot to sell. They're a program on the rise, and I definitely wouldn't count them out by any means. Maybe that visit being a little shorter might end up helping Georgia. Maybe the timing of it is all Tennessee needs.
Yeah. Hey, you could look at it either way, but either way you look at it, there's still a lot of recruitment left before he makes that final decision. So let's talk about the fifth prospect on this list. Now, he is committed to Florida State. We're talking about five-star safety, KJ Bolden, the number one safety in America. Shocked the recruiting world just a couple weeks ago when he chose FSU over Georgia and Auburn, Ohio State, among others. Jake, is he still in contact with the Georgia staff at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Georgia's still recruiting him, and he's still receptive to that recruitment. I don't think he's going to ever shut Georgia down. But, listen, Georgia recruited this kid hard for over 2 years, and they didn't get him. I think this is really going to come down to maybe what happens with Florida State. Do they live up to expectations? Do they stumble a couple of times and maybe have a disappointing season? Will that even matter? Ultimately, I don't know that Georgia could have done a better job recruiting the kid. I mean, maybe there is, something here or something there that they can say that kind of, clicks with him, down the line. But they put in a lot of effort already. They recruited him very hard. They put their best guys on him, with Kirby having a big part in this thing, Fran Brown, Will Muschamp, ultimately, I think he probably sticks with Florida State, but I know that Georgia's not going to give up. And I think that, Florida State might, if he ends up at Georgia, I think it might be a situation where Florida State lost him by maybe losing some momentum during the season, as opposed to maybe Georgia being able to do something that it didn't do over the past 3 years to convince him to come to Georgia.
Yeah, Florida State won 10 games last year, but that's kind of a flash in terms of their recent history. They've been down, so you never know. Florida State does have some expectations to live up to. So if Georgia is to flip KJ, is this one of these ones that fans just have to wait till the end and Georgia's going to make a late try? Or do you see him coming on campus early on in the season and them going for a flip then?
I mean, they'll take it when they can get it. It's one of those deals, man, honestly, when I feel like when you have a commitment like this one and it's super high profile, it's almost like it's got to be a Jermaine Burton or a George Pickens. And I say those two because those are the two I'm familiar with Georgia. Those were signing day deals. Yeah. Those were things that happened right there at the last moment. And that if I had to predict, if you said, hey, KJ Bolden's going to flip to Georgia, predict when, I'd say on signing day. And I don't expect it to happen, but if it's going to, I think it's going to be at the final hour.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I agree with it. I think a lot of times when these huge, high-profile commitments go down, not to say that they're always going to stick, but they kind of got to take a little breather, let some air back in the room because everything was so tense that it likely does go down to the end. And I'm sure Florida State, they're not going to stop recruiting KJ Bolden just because he's committed. They probably know the same thing. So we'll see what happens there. But Jake Rowe, Thanks for stopping by the Inside Scoop to talk about 5 of the most wanted UGA recruits in the 2024 class.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.